Disaster leaves scars that never fade. Lives are erased, futures stolen, and nothing is ever the same. This is the grim reality of humans' darkest chapters. Here's a breakdown of history's most devastating disasters, all explained in just 15 minutes. Number 8. Chernobyl, 1986. Your skin burns as if on fire, but there are no flames. Your breath turns to razor blades, slicing with every gasp. Blood fills your throat, your skin blisters, and the taste of metal and ash chokes you. This is not a scene out of a horror movie. This was Chernobyl, April 26, 1986. Reactor 4 at the power plant exploded at 1:23 a.m., spewing more radiation than Hiroshima and Nagasaki combined. This was the result of a routine safety test gone wrong. Operators conducted this test with key systems disabled, leaving the unstable RBMK reactor vulnerable to surges. Running at dangerously low power, a sudden drop in power forced them to remove control rods. This decision reduced the reactor safety margins to built-in buffers that prevent a system from reaching a catastrophic failure point. In a nuclear reactor, safety margins are crucial, providing excess cooling capacity, redundant systems, and physical barriers to contain radiation in case of an accident. By removing more control rods, the operators left the reactor with minimal protection against a disaster. Then, the reactor's power output began to increase uncontrollably. An operator's attempt to activate the emergency shutdown to prevent a complete loss of control. However, a design flaw in the graphite-tipped control rods caused a massive power surge. The reactors couldn't handle it, its core exploded, unleashing deadly radiation, and the nightmare began. The Chernobyl explosion released massive amounts of radioactive material. 49,000 people were evacuated from Pripyat and surrounding areas. 2 plant workers died instantly, 28 emergency responders died from acute radiation syndrome within weeks. Long-term, the disaster caused thousands of thyroid cancer cases, especially in children. Experts estimated over 5,000 cases across Europe, so far 41,000 by 2065 due to the lingering radiation. Environmentally, the fallout rendered vast areas uninhabitable, creating the Chernobyl exclusion zone. Pripyat, once a bustling city, now stands frozen in time. A steel sarcophagus encases Reactor 4, holding back the beast within. Pripyat is a haunting museum of abandonment. The Ferris wheel never turned again. The town is left as a ghost of what it was. If you're finding this breakdown as gripping as we are, a quick like or subscribe helps us keep uncovering more moments like these. Number 7. The Great Fire of London, 1666. London was burning. The heat was unbearable. A fire started early in the morning of September 2nd, 1666. In Thomas Farner's bakery on Pudding Lane, a spark from his oven lit the dry timber walls, and within hours, strong winds turned into a monster. By dawn, the flames had jumped from house to house, driven by strong winds. London's streets, narrow and crammed with wooden buildings, became a perfect trap. The summer had been dry, leaving the city brittle, ready to burn. There were no fire brigades to stop it. Water and prayers were no match for the inferno. In 4 days, the fire consumed 13,200 houses, 87 churches, and St. Paul's Cathedral. By the time the wind died and the flames were finally under control, 80% of the city inside the walls were gone. In the aftermath, 70,000 people were left homeless. They camped in fields, clutching with what was left. Official records stated that 16 people died, but the real number was much higher. The heat was so intense that bones and bodies were reduced to nothing, leaving no trace. But London rose again, streets were widened, buildings made of bricks and stones replaced wood. And architects like Christopher Wren gave the city a new face. St. Paul's Cathedral was rebuilt, stronger this time, a symbol of hope. It taught London how fragile it was, how carelessness and poor planning could lead to ruin, but it changed the city forever. Number 6. The 9/11 attacks, 2001. No regular flyer on board the American Airlines Flight 11 knew that what was about to happen during the course of this journey would start a series of tragedies which would rewrite the modern history of America, and eventually most of the Middle East. At some point in the flight, men with knives stormed the cockpit, their voices sharp, their orders terrifying. Fear must have rippled through the passengers when they realized that the movement of the plane was now rough and unnatural. Terrorists were now in control of this flight. These attackers were part of the Al-Qaeda, a terrorist organization led by Osama bin Laden. Their grievances were tied to the US policies in the Middle East. Bin Laden openly criticized America's support for Israel, calling it a betrayal of the Islamic world. He was also angered by the presence of US troops in Saudi Arabia, home to Islam's holiest cities, after the Gulf War. Economic sanctions on Iraq, which caused widespread suffering, added fuel to his hatred. These to bin Laden symbolized what he saw as American dominance over the Muslim world, so he decided to attack. The plan involved hijacking 4 commercial airplanes. Each team of terrorists included trained pilots who would take control. They smuggled small knives and box cutters through airport security, which was much less strict at the time. Unbeknownst to the horrors that awaited them, workers in the North Tower of the World Trade Center were starting their day. Emails were sent, phones rang, coffee cups steamed on desks. Then came the impact. At 8:46 a.m., American Airlines Flight 11 hit the building. The force of the impact was so great that the building swayed before flames erupted. At 9:37 a.m., another hijacked plane, American Flight 77, struck the Pentagon. A section of the building collapsed, killing military personnel and civilians alike. Then at 10:03 a.m., United Airlines Flight 93 crashed into a field in Pennsylvania. Its passengers, aware of the attacks, fought back against the hijackers. The bravery likely prevented further devastation, as the plane was believed to be targeting the U.S. Capitol or the White House. By 10:28 a.m., both towers had collapsed. Nearly 3,000 people were killed, including 343 firefighters and paramedics. The U.S. launched the War on Terror, targeting Al-Qaeda and Taliban-controlled Afghanistan. Operation Enduring Freedom began on October 7, 2001, removing the Taliban but leading to a 20-year-long conflict. Wars in Afghanistan and Iraq costed trillions and sparked debates over surveillance, torture, and indefinite detention. The attacks caused an estimated $10 billion in property damage, left thousands grieving, and changed the world forever. Number 5. The 2004 Indian Ocean Tsunami. It was the morning of December 26, 2004. In villages along the Indian Ocean, people were starting their day. Fishermen unloading their catch, children playing in the shore, and tourists lounging on the beaches. Then the ground shook violently. A 9.1 magnitude earthquake off Sumatra, Indonesia had hit. Buildings cracked, dishes fell, and panic set in. The tremors stopped as suddenly as they started. Everyone stood in silence, unsure of what had just happened. Minutes later, the sea changed. The waves receded unnaturally far, leaving behind an empty, exposed ocean floor. Confused crowds gathered, unaware of the danger. Then it came. A tsunami, with waves up to 100 feet high, traveling as fast as 500 miles per hour. In Sri Lanka, a mother clung to her baby as the water tore them apart. In Thailand, tourists were swept from beaches, their laughter replaced by horror. In Indonesia, entire villages vanished. Bodies floated where homes once stood. The cause was far below, hidden deep under the Indian Ocean. 2 tectonic plates collided, the Burma Plate and the Indian Plate. Their violent shift displaced the seafloor by meters, pushing trillions of liters of water outwards, unleashing tsunamis that slammed into 14 countries, hitting Indonesia first, then Sri Lanka, India, Thailand, and Somalia hours later. In total, 230,000 people lost their lives, and millions were displaced. Entire towns were erased from the map, leaving a legacy of devastation. Number 4. The Hiroshima and Nagasaki bombings, 1945. The morning sun hung over Hiroshima on August 6, 1945. Children laughed on their way to school, workers bustled through crowded streets. About them, a single B-29 bomber, Enola Gay, soared through the clear skies. At 8:15 a.m., it released its payload. A bomb nicknamed Little Boy. Then came the flash, brighter than the sun, hotter than anything on Earth. The explosion unleashed energy equivalent to 15,000 tons of TNT. In an instant, the city was engulfed in a blinding flash of light. People were scorched where they stood. Shadows burned into walls. The only remains of some, skin melted, peeled away like paper. A woman screamed, clutching her child, her body charred. Buildings collapsed, trapped families beneath smoldering rubble. Fires erupted, consuming everything in their path. The river turned red with blood as survivors, their skin hanging in shreds, tried to cool their burns. But at the end of the day, over 70,000 people were dead. Tens of thousands more would succumb to injuries and radiation sickness in the weeks to come. 3 days later, on August 9th, 1945, it happened again in Nagasaki. A second B-29 boxcar dropped Fat Man, a plutonium bomb. The hilly terrain of Nagasaki limited the bomb's range, but the destruction was massive. Whole neighborhoods were ripped out, at least 40,000 people died instantly. Fires burned for days and survivors faced the same unspeakable horrors as those in Hiroshima. The decision to use these bombs were made by President Harry S. Truman, who wanted to end the World War II quickly. Japan had refused the Potsdam Declaration, which demanded unconditional surrender. Military leaders feared a ground invasion would cost up to 1 million Allied lives and more Japanese casualties. They believed the atomic bomb was the only way to make Japan surrender. On August 15, 1945, Emperor Hirohito declared Japan's surrender, citing the bomb as the reason. World War II was over, but the bombs left a lasting wound. By the end of 1945, over 200,000 people were dead, and those who survived had lifelong health problems, stigma, and trauma. The bombs also changed global politics and started the nuclear arms race and the ethical debates that continue to this day. Number 3. The Titanic disaster, 1912. The night was freezing and the air was still. The Titanic, the largest ship in the world, was sinking. Water rushed through the lower decks, flooding rooms in minutes. Passengers clung to each other, scrambling to reach the lifeboats. Thousands about to die. Just days earlier, the Titanic had been a marvel of human achievement. Built in Belfast, it was over 882 feet long and 92 feet wide. It had grand staircases, fine dining rooms, and even a swimming pool. First-class passengers lived in luxury, while third-class travelers dreamed of a better life in America. The ship was called unsinkable because of its watertight compartments, but no one realized their limits. On April 10, 1912, it set sail from Southampton to New York, carrying over 2,200 people. The wealthy in grand suites, the hopeful poor in third class, and a crew proud to be aboard the largest ship ever built. 4 days later, on April 14th, warnings of icebergs came in, but the ship continued at high speed. At 11:40 p.m., a lookout shouted iceberg ahead. The crew turned sharply, but it was too late. The iceberg ripped through the ship's side, opening 5 compartments to the sea. Water poured in fast than the pumps could handle. Within minutes, the lower decks were flooding. Passengers in third class woke the water lapping at their feet. Panic spread. Crew members tried to calm the chaos, but the reality was grim. The Titanic could only stay afloat in 4 compartments flooded, not 5. The ship was doomed. On deck, lifeboats were hurriedly loaded, but there were only 20, enough for just half of those on board. Women and children were given priority, leaving husbands and fathers behind. The lifeboats were launched half full as the crew struggled to manage the frantic crowds. The freezing Atlantic wind howled through the chaos as the ship tilted further into the icy sea. By 2:20 a.m., the Titanic broke in two. The bow plunged into the depths, followed by the stern. Over 1,500 people were thrown into the freezing waters, with hypothermia claimed most lives within minutes. Only about 700 survivors made it to lifeboats and were rescued hours later by the RMS Carpathia. The aftermath revealed shocking failures. The Titanic's design, while innovative, had critical flaws. Its watertight compartments weren't capped, allowing to spill water from one another. Lifeboats, though sufficient by outdated regulations, were woefully inadequate. And human decisions, ignoring iceberg warnings and maintaining high speed, sealed its fate. The disaster led to sweeping changes. Ships were now required to carry lifeboats for all passengers, keeping 24-hour radio watch and follow stricter safety standards. The International Ice Patrol was established to monitor icebergs in the North Atlantic. Number 2. The Hindenburg Disaster, 1937. The Hindenburg floated about Lakehurst, New Jersey. It was a German passenger airship, the largest ever built, designed for luxurious transatlantic travel. It had flown smoothly from Frankfurt, carrying 97 people, passengers excited to reach America, and crew members focused on landing the giant craft. On May 6, 1937, the era of airships was at its peak. The Hindenburg was filled with hydrogen, a gas lighter than air, but highly flammable. Thunderstorms earlier that evening may have electrified the airship. A small gas leak probably ignited the hydrogen, turned into a fireball, roaring like nothing anyone had ever heard before as the Hindenburg's hydrogen cells ignited. Flames shot up and out, and the ship was gone in an instant. The airship, once so majestic, collapsed in seconds. Its metal skeletons crashed to the ground in a heap of burning wreckage. In 60 seconds, it was all over. The Hindenburg, once the epitome of luxury and progress, was in ruins. Flames licked the collapsed framework, smoke hung heavy in the air, and the injured cried out. 36 of the 97 people on board and one ground crew member were dead. Survivors tumbled away from the wreckage, their clothes burned, their faces etched with fear. The Hindenburg was the end of passenger airships. The risk of hydrogen were obvious, and future airships used helium, a non-inflammable alternative. But the disaster moved aviation forward. Planes became the new norms, their safety and speed unbeatable. Number 1. Spanish flu, 1918. The 1918-1919 influenza pandemic, or Spanish flu, swept across the globe, infecting 1/3 of the world's population. Caused by H1N1 virus with genes likely of avian origins, it struck during the chaos of World War I. The virus spread rapidly, carried by troop movements and crowded living conditions. Unlike regular flu, the Spanish flu was deadliest for healthy adults 20 to 40. It killed 50 to 100 million people worldwide. 675,000 in the US. Entire communities were decimated as healthcare systems collapsed. Streets were empty, except for carts carrying the dead. No vaccines, no antiviral drugs. Public health relied on quarantine, isolation, and bans on gatherings. Many of these measures came too late to stop the spread. A century later, Corona swept across the world. We still had not learned our lesson. History's darkest moments teach us hard truths about survival, resilience, and the cost of human error. These disasters changed the world, but they also reveal our strength to rebuild. The question is, if another disaster will come, it is when, and will we be ready? If you found this journey into the past gripping, please hit that like button, share your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe for more stories that uncover the untold lessons of history. See you in the next video.